Hello there.
Hello.
Patrick and I thought today we'd talk a little bit about the process that Patrick went through in discerning if it was time to go to the seminary. Patrick is actually heading to the seminary this fall in September 2015. He'll be going to Sacred Heart Major Seminary. He's already got a degree and has done lots of things, and he might tell you a little bit about that. But he's going as what we call a pre-theologian. He's going to go study 2 years of philosophy, and God willing, if he still feels the call, he'll go on and study 4 years of graduate program. So we thought today we'd talk about how it all began, or at least how he got here to the vocation director's office. Again, Father John Linden, I've been doing this for 4 or 5 years now, and pretty much have learned through the years how to help a guy discern. I've learned much more on how to help a guy discern. So our desire is to help you discern whether or not it's time for you to talk to the vocation director. And so we're going to go through that process. And one of the first questions I ask a guy when he sits in the seat that Patrick is in is Patrick, what, and it's just a simple question, Patrick, what got you into that seat this day? So do you remember that day, and what did your heart do that day you heard that question?
Yeah, actually, I remember when I first called you. Not long before I called you, I just had this sense in my heart, like God is calling me to the priesthood. But it wasn't that the sky parted and there wasn't any, lightning or thunder or anything like that. It was just this sense in my heart, like I want you to look into the priesthood. And I'd always been a practicing Catholic and going to Mass on Sundays, but to be honest, it wasn't something that I had thought about when I was young. This is something that happened when I was in my mid-20s. So I'm a little bit of a late bloomer in that sense. But God definitely had a plan where maybe I had other plans previously. At one time, I thought I was going to be a lawyer. One time, I thought I was going to work in sports management. But God had a different plan. And I think the turning point for me in terms of contacting Father John was just realizing that this feeling wasn't going to go away, that it wasn't something I could just ignore. It was something that I had to talk to the vocations office about.
Awesome.
So a great question that we'd have for young men today. Another question. Well, let's go back to another question that I asked on that first day, and then we'll come back to when is it a good time to come see the vocation director. But there's a second question that I'll usually ask the guys on the very first day they're here, and that is, what specific about the priesthood has attracted you to the priesthood?
And I think for me, just that relationship with Jesus developed into a relationship of, Jesus, not only do I want to know you and love you, but I also want others to know you and love you. And so then the question I asked myself, well, I could go be a youth minister, or I could be a theology teacher, or I could just, be working in the world as a husband and a father. So are you really calling me, Jesus, to think about being a priest for your church? And I think, again, for me, there was another turning point, and that was I gave him permission to speak to me, to speak to my heart. And I said, Jesus, if you want me to be a priest, you show me. You bring people into my life, confirm it in prayer, make it something that you well up in my heart so that I desire it.
And in fact, one of Patrick's questions was, you want to give him the question, and I'll explain to them what I think about it. But he had a great question about something that's in a guy's heart when he's coming into this office, and that question was?
Yeah, the question is, how do I know that this is real? Because for me, I had a lot of going back and forth in my mind of, is this really Jesus calling, or am I just making this up? So how do I know that this is really real?
And he started to give a little bit of the answer to that just a second ago. The real, how do we know it's real? One of the ways is a continual confirmation through not just one person saying this or one feeling in my heart, but a continual piling up of confirmations that are specific to the priesthood, like you were saying earlier. Not that I just want to be around the sacraments, I wanted to give the sacraments. That's a huge part that should be in a guy's heart, because as he was saying, to just minister, to want to help God's people, everybody should do that. That's something that we receive in baptism. But what is specific to the priesthood that's driving my heart to think about that, to preach, to want to teach people, to want to baptize, to want to bring these children into the family of God, to even think about what it would be like to work with somebody when they're dying on their deathbed and prepare them for heaven, to prepare them for the new birth. These kind of things are the things a guy should be, if he's not yet thinking about, should start thinking about. If he's real serious about priesthood possibly being in his future. And that's the real important point too, possibly being, as we tried to convey today. Walking into this office doesn't mean you're going to the seminary, and certainly doesn't mean you're going to go to the priesthood. So that brings me to the next question, and maybe I'll let Patrick start with this answer, and maybe I'll have a little more to say. But when should a guy contact the vocation director?
For me, there was a turning point, and that was just realizing that I'm not meant to make this decision on my own, and I'm not smart enough to decide, whether to go to seminary on my own. And the other thing is, a beautiful thing about being Catholic is the young man or young women who's discerning religious life or the priesthood. It's something that the church discerns with you. So in my case, it was humbling myself and just realizing, okay, I need to allow the church to help me. And the vocations office is the beginning of that.
And in addition to that, it's very important for, in fact, I've worked with guys throughout the years and kind of whittled it down to 6 things that a guy should be doing if he's not doing. And that some of these are done before you even walk into the office, and Patrick can attest to all these. You got to be praying. You got to pray. You got to ask the Lord. If you're calling me, I want to hear it from you, and I need to learn and to open my ears to hear that call. And then secondarily, as we just talked about the sacraments, but not just going to them, but this welling up in my heart to give them. But for sure, going to them, going to the Eucharist as often as possible, going to reconciliation regularly. Because if you're going to have the ministry of mercy, you got to be a man that knows mercy. Thirdly, Scriptures, knowing the Lord in the Scriptures, reading regularly, talking to Him, hearing from Him, seeing what He did, hearing what He did, hearing what He said. And then what Patrick was just saying a second ago, mentors. I mean, vocation director is not the only guy in this process. You've got parents, you've got friends, you've got other priests, you got other people you trust in the world. More people you can talk to, the better. Oftentimes, the one trick of the devil is you got to do this all on your own, make all this decision on your own. As Patrick was saying, the church is with me on this. There's a certain point that there's a certain part of this that's me, but then I have to ask the church, the bride, what do you think about this? So that's working with all the parts and pieces of the church, all the body. And then you come into this the vocation director when it's time to kind of take a next stage. And so while you're out there, there's media, there's all kinds of books, videos, YouTubes. You're looking at one right now that can help you to continue to feed the heart with what is it about priesthood that I find attractive. And lastly, ministry. You got to get out there and do something. Something that really is hands-on work with others, because it's in that you're training yourself to make yourself a gift and to receive others as gifts. And so, Patrick, I ask you, in this process, you've done a lot of ministry preparing for this. What in that ministry helped you to, again, make that decision to take the step to go to seminary?
Yeah, at one time I was a youth minister as well as a theology teacher, and then I was a chastity speaker at one time too. So lots of different ministry opportunities and retreat opportunities, and it was all amazing. And you know, it did feed that desire to give of myself, but there was just that sense that Jesus was asking for more. And even though I was experiencing a lot of good things and being able to give of myself in these different ministries, I knew that Jesus was asking me to open my heart and to continue discerning in seminary.
So one of the last things I want to ask you, Patrick, is about the application process, because we got men here saying, you know, when do I apply? And so it's part of how I operate in the office, but it's also part for the guy. I mean, we mutually discern when it's time to take on the application. And why is that? I don't think a guy should be under a lot of pressure, because the application is a hefty process. There's a lot of things to do in it. And the reason being is because the guy's going to learn a lot about himself, and then he's going to help the bishop, me, and the formation staff at the seminary learn a lot about him too through this process. So it's got lots of layers in it, including autobiography, and the guy will even eventually go to receive a psychological evaluation so that he can start to look into his own self and who he is. So it's a big process, and so I don't just give it away. What I do is wait for the right time, when that guy is really getting to the point where it's important to now take it to another step. And so what I want to ask Patrick is, he went through this process of application. You know, how did it help in your discernment process?
Yeah, so Father John's right, that when I received the application, I realized that, wow, there's a lot here. And one of the reasons for that is because the church wants to examine a person fully and make sure that they're receiving confirmation, not only in their own heart, but also from letters of recommendation, you know, past employers, and their whole life, just taking a look at their entire life. And so as I was going through the process, things emerged in me, and then also you know, outside of me in terms of through others, where I realized, wow, I really am being called to the seminary. And it was very affirming. The application process was great confirmation for me, just as I received each of those steps, and going through even the psychological evaluation was really a healthy step in terms of realizing, wow, I'm not crazy. This is a totally legitimate call and an amazing call from the Lord. So it was really a privilege to go through that process.
And Patrick, one of the things that's most important for all of us is getting to that point where I can entrust myself to God and to His church. But that's not an easy thing to do. We all have things we've struggled with. We've all been burned. We've all been hurt in the world, and it's a process to open our hearts to the Lord. I want to ask you a little bit about how did that process develop in your heart and just telling these guys anyway what it takes to be able to trust the Lord enough to take this leap.
Yeah, I think trust is a very, very important word, not just in terms of discerning seminary and discerning priesthood, but in anything we do as Christians, trust is extremely important. And I think at first, when I was thinking about the priesthood, I wasn't really sure I could trust